All right, we're live.
Hello, hello, hello. We are trying, what is this, Booksellers After Dark? It's going to be a
Booksellers After Dark, a later one. We'll see. I'm curious if more people will like this time or fewer people will like this time. It'll be interesting to see.
It will be good. Well, Matthew has his classy background, as always. Everybody's been mad at me for not having a good background, so I flew all the way to Arkansas to be with my buddies, Mark and Nikki. So thank you for letting me crash your house and do a little interview. Last time we did an interview, I was with Romer, and we got in trouble because we did not ask permission first, and we're not very respectful of our hosts. So ask Romer that story. That's a good one. So I'm coming to you live from Arkansas. We are a couple hours after our normal scheduled start time. So thank you for bearing with us. Hopefully that allows that want to drink with us. That's fine. You can now do that. It is 6 p.m. there. It's appropriate. East Coast, some of you might be in already. It's 9 p.m. for those of you who are early birds. And we'll see. Might be a different audience. If you're watching, drop a note, say hello, let us know where you're from. And we'll get to the drinking part in a second. Welcome to, what is this, number 4?
Yeah, this is episode number 4. Bill Martling has something he wanted to say to you there.
Bill, go back to watching Billions or Survivor or something.
This time works perfectly. Pierre, yeah, episode 4, on our way to 100.
Sweet. Well, most podcasts fail within the first couple episodes, so we'll see how we do.
Oh, so we passed the trend already with 4 episodes?
I think so. So we're on episode 4. Thanks for those of you who are watching. It is mostly about books. I'm reading a book on golf in Scotland because why not? So this is mostly about books, and we have a special guest tonight that I'm really excited to have. And he's also no stranger to the world of bourbon, so we'll kind of get into that as well. I do have a really fun anecdote, a fun sales rank story that I'm going to share. Hopefully we can all learn a little something. We'll see what everybody's drinking, and we're going to get right to our special guest. So without further ado, let's bring him in, whisk the curtain away, and say hello to Michael Krider. And actually, we normally would have been in 3 different time zones. I'm in Central, technically, tonight. Matthew's still on the left coast. And Michael, you want to let the viewers know where you are?
We are in San Diego, California. So way off actually, I'm only about 2 miles off the water, which is great. I don't normally live here, so it's great.
So you have beautiful views, and we're staring at generic gray walls.
There we go.
Perfect. Cool.
That's the life of an Airbnb. It happens.
It is the life of an Airbnb. Well, Michael and I were hanging out kind of right before COVID took off. So I don't know which one of us is to blame, but he got to come hang out with us in Arizona. He's come to a number of the Turn the Page events, and he's pretty active in the book selling community. Are you even on Instagram? I think you're just a Facebook guy.
Nah, I tried. I have it like I have my Twitter account where it's like just to see the news and what's happening in that space. But really, I just use Facebook. And then, I text you in the middle of the night, that kind of stuff.
Does happen. That is one downside of having friends on the West Coast because, it's 7 p.m. there and it's 10 p.m. for me. I am a bit of a night owl, so it's fine. And we have enough of a relationship that I don't feel bad ignoring you either if I, don't decide to have a conversation late at night. So Michael is fairly intelligent, actually incredibly intelligent. He thinks through things very differently, which I hope you will see through this interview. What shirt are you rocking there? I saw you got a little old swag going on.
You gave me this when we were in Phoenix, I think. Might have been just before then, but right at the peak of difficult times with that particular sector of the nation.
Yep.
Oh, thank you.
There we go.
Yeah. Knock on wood, it hasn't been the problem it was, 2 years ago, it feels like now.
It comes and goes in waves. I think there's somebody in the group that's actually facing a little bit of an issue right now.
Yeah,
but
I saw that. Yeah.
So it tends to come and go. For those that aren't familiar, there's some content. You can check out the Facebook group for that as well. There are counterfeit books because when books go up to $200 and $300 and $400 a pop, of course, people are going to try and figure out how to take advantage of that. And so enter counterfeit books. And that's one of the downsides of free market. But we'll talk about that another time. So let's get into the bourbon. The nice part about traveling. So I'm down in Arkansas. We actually went over to the PGA Championship today. So we were over in Tulsa, drove over, actually got to see my college roommate. He is a CPA there. And so we got to meet up. He happened to be at the golf tournament as well. So we did that. We soaked out, baked out in the sun. So if my face is a little red, that's what's going on today. My hair is all hat haired and all that. So apologize for the rudeness of wearing a hat, but that I digress. The beers today, this is an interesting free market question. The beers today were $19. And so that popped up on social media. And some of the players were like, what does this do? Cure cancer? Like, this isn't fair to the fans. Of course, Brooks Koepka, if you guys know who he is, was like, if you drink enough, you won't really care. So Michael, what's your take on how high is too high for beer prices?
There's no price that's too high. You pay it, you want it. That's simple. I mean, the best price you can do is go to Vegas and find the best bar in Vegas, play your $5 blackjack and get them for free for $1. Tip your waitress, obviously. But you know, the price is what you're willing to pay. We have an amazing scene here. If you do not know that San Diego is one of the best beer areas in the nation, please come. They're everywhere. They're all very, very good. The IPA craze pretty much launched from here. It's an absolute amazing experience. I did not even know, and I only lived one county away. I moved in with my girlfriend at the time, and we never looked back. It's a great scene here. It
is a good scene. I've been privy to a couple good beers there, as Bill has come out and enjoyed some as well. There's a lot of booksellers in the San Diego, Southern California area. So for those looking to go out and network and meet, some of them are shyer than others, but in general, they're a pretty friendly bunch. I got a couple things to say about that. One, I grew up in Grand Rapids, which is another one of the early birthplaces of beer. We don't have to discuss all the history of it. And then, of course, I lived in Denver, so not a bad beer scene itself. I think $19 is too high, to the point where I didn't drink it. Matthew, what's the most you've ever paid for a beer, like a non-specialty beer?
Not a specialty, like a specialty beer, or not a specialty beer?
No, like this was like Mick Ultra and Stella.
Probably somewhere like $12 to $13. My kids like to watch those fail videos, you know, where everyone just falls, and you always see those people like in the stands fall and their drinks go everywhere. And I'm always like, that was like a $30 fall right there. Yeah, I think $12 or $13 is probably the most I've paid. That's typically at the arenas I've been to, it's like $12, $13 for a drink. I haven't seen 19. 19's a little up there, but obviously they're pricing it that way because certain people are willing to pay that. It's interesting.
Well, I have two thoughts. One is it's a captive market, so they can charge whatever they want. And it's interesting. I go to a number of golf tournaments, and I usually see a lot more beer being consumed. It was way muted. The lines were not there at all. And so they did their job. I think it's actually a tax. So I think they tried to make it expensive so that people don't just get hammered and then make fools of themselves and make for bad TV and wreck the golfers. So I think I think they did that. My
just throwing it out there. Why don't they charge $17 and have their staff get tipped a little bit more money? Like 19's kind of a thin tip there, don't you think?
Yeah, if they're paying cash. I mean, most people are cashless anyway, but that's a good point. Hot tip coming in from Michael. Well, real quick, let's chat about what we're drinking tonight, and then we will get into the meat of our conversation. So, Michael, why don't you start us off as our guest?
All right. So I went for something probably unexpected from me, if you know my history. But I chose Hibiki Japanese Harmony whiskey. It's a blended whiskey. I'm a pretty big fan of Japanese whiskeys in particular. We're between houses right now, so our pantry is a little bit dry. But the Japanese whiskeys are really neat, straight to the point. They go down warm, and they're known for their solid textures and their oaks. And this company was actually purchased by Jim Beam, or actually, I'm not sure. One of them acquired the other, and I don't know which one. But they make a 21-year-old malt that I'm looking to get my hands on. It goes for about $800 to $1,000. And for me, it's like the perfect housewarming present when we move in next month. So that's what I have right tonight.
Well, that's fantastic. And congrats again. I know I've said it a couple times, but congrats on getting a house, especially in California. That is no small feat.
Yeah. I was telling Matt, the way to translate it, $575 a square foot.
Yeah, let's not think about that.
That'll just make you depressed. Don't think about it.
Well, cool. So that'll be interesting. I see you've already enjoyed most of the bottle, so hopefully that wasn't today.
He was pre-gaming really hard right before we started here.
I don't think he was that nervous to be on with us. Well, we got Jason out of Austin, Texas, saying hello from Armadillo Arbitrage. So what's up, Jason? Thanks for watching. We've got people from Tennessee and Kentucky, which is Bourbon County. Matthew, what do you got? Enjoying tonight?
We're only 4 episodes in, and I'm already breaking the rules of the show. I do not have a
Oh
bourbon
my
tonight.
goodness.
I just wanted something a little different. I just got a basic margarita with me tonight with the Rock's little Terramana
Oh, that's
tequila.
awesome.
Tequila there. I actually like this. Some people like this. Some people think it's just hyped up because he's a celebrity, but I actually like that tequila. So I've got a margarita right now, but I might switch halfway through and go grab a bourbon. But for some reason, margarita just seemed like it hit the spot tonight.
Hey, you do you. I love watching The Rock on social media because he'll be like, yeah, I'm out there hustling and grinding and trying to sell his tequila brand. And he's like walking from his private jet to the meeting. I'm like, I don't fault him. Hustle is hustle. But his way of hustling is a little bit different than some of ours. So
He gets the manual labor in the gym.
yeah. Well, I've got a special one. My friends here in Arkansas actually picked it up, and they know I collect some. But bourbon's made for drinking, so we popped it open tonight. They'll probably be sneaking in here to steal the bottle. But this is it's actually from the Beam family as well. It's a Booker's, so it's down that family line, if you will. So Booker's, this is Little Book. They do every year. They do, and it comes in a nice box. I mean, they probably used to be handmade. I'm sure they're not anymore, but they're beautiful boxes, and they come out once a year, and they're highly sought after. This is, I believe it's chapter 5, so number 5. Kind of fun since it's got some book references. This is from 2021. So if you ever get your hands on them, they're pretty good. Yeah, this is number 5, 2021. A light linger of warmth, meaning it'll burn nicely, and smoked vanilla are the tasting notes. So that'll be fun. So looking forward to that. So cheers, fellas.
Cheers.
Got a good wide range of drinks for tonight. All right. Well, I have a fun anecdote, and I think Michael has kind of a fun one that he woke up to, and then we'll kind of jump into his story, what he does, and how that relates to each one of you as well. Ryan is commenting in here. He's actually one of my virtual assistants from the Philippines. And one of his primary tasks, other than repricing stuff that disappears or goes inactive or has any of that kind of stuff, he goes through and does that individually, is he's actually doing some bourbon research. So Ryan, this is, obviously you've been doing some homework and seeing them, but this is what one looks like in real life. So I appreciate you. And thanks for being here. I have no idea what time it is in the Philippines, probably middle of the day over there. So, or early in the morning, I suppose. I got a fun story. This happened last Friday. I went to lunch with my warehouse manager. We just catch up periodically, hear how stuff's going, learn what we can improve, et cetera. Just kind of get a pulse on the business. And one of our consignment clients sent us in. He was kind of complaining. He goes, we got 4 of the same book. They're big, and they all have a sales rank of 0. I'm like, well, that's interesting because we don't normally accept stuff with sales rank of 0. And I'm like, you know what? We kind of took a quick look at it. I didn't really even pull up Keepa. And I said, why don't you just list them merchant fulfilled? We've got plenty of shelf space. And I don't know, like whatever our repricer tosses it in, 30, 40, 50 bucks, whatever the floor price, there weren't any listed. And I said, whatever, maybe there was different data when we scanned it because our client a bit, and we go to lunch and we sit down, and I got, get my notifications and looked, and it was, wait a second, that's one of those books. And so I pull it up and show him. And while we're sitting there, 3 books sold within like the first 15 minutes of that book that had a sales rank of 0. My understanding of a 0 sales rank, and I was wrong. I probably said it on the channel, I thought a sales rank of 0 means it had never, ever sold. What it means is Amazon just 0 to back out. And I have a couple theories, and I'm sure Bill does too, about $1. But this book sold 3 times for, I think, 40 bucks. 30 to 40 bucks. And I said, just for fun, I have 1 left. I said, let's just jack the price. We jacked for 60 bucks, and it sold by the end of lunch. So we sold 4 copies of a book that didn't have any offers, but the sales rank was 0. The next couple hours later, when sales rank finally caught up with it, it does what we normally assume sales rank to do. It popped on the scene at about 120,000. About a day and a half later, it was 400 and some thousand. And about 5 days later, it was almost 1 million again. So I went back and looked at the Keepa, I looked at our chart IQ, the story kind of matched. This book hadn't sold since like 2020. So about 2 years, like early 2020. And the sales rank, right, about a month ago, 2 months ago, was about 8 million. So it's basically a long tail book. Nobody had bought it. I think it looks like there was some offers periodically, but it hadn't sold in the last 2 years. Amazon from time to time cleans up the catalog. They remove duplicate listings. Sometimes I guess they'll drop down the price. and they decided to, or not drop down the price, but drop the rank, and they cut the rank to 0. And so that's kind of where it ended up. So just a fun fact is anytime you'll end up with, books with a sales rank of 0, that doesn't mean don't list them. So that was cool. I'll share a little bit more on the Facebook group. I'll kind of share the example. I don't mind sharing which book it was. It's not like it's a secret or hard book to find. But I think if you find anything that doesn't have listing data, and nobody's on the listing, I think you can kind of take that with a grain of salt and maybe try listing stuff. Worst case, in our case, we already had the books. We already paid for shipping. It didn't take long to list them, put them on our shelves. And, worst case, we lost a little bit of labor and have to throw them away or recycle them later. Best case is what happened. Maybe we left money on the table. Maybe they would have sold for $100 a pop. Maybe someone bought them to flip them. I don't know. But that was kind of a fun, just something to have at lunch. Michael, you want to share a little bit? You said you had back when cancel culture was large, you kind of woke up to a nice surprise.
Yeah. So we all remember kind of how the Dr. Seuss situation played out last year. And if you don't know, their estate is here in San Diego. And so we get through their books all the time. We collect them. They're usually pretty damaged. We can't do much with them, but we do, hoard them as we can. And I was getting backed up with other things at the time. And so we just kept hoarding and hoarding and hoarding. And I probably had a Gaylord full of just Dr. Seuss hardcovers. So we started making bundles of them. And a Gaylord of Dr. Seuss hardcovers, probably 14 or 1,500 of them because they stack so well. And we started making bundles of them. And just coincidentally, it was right before all this happened. And we don't list the titles. We just, bundles of 20, bundles of 25, bundles of 30. And we put them in at a holding price. And then that whole situation happened. And I woke up to $4,000 or $5,000 in sales of everything popping off at our holding price. And it was one of those things where I saw that before I saw the news as to why. And I mean, you see something like that, and it's such a white swan event that you're like, okay, what's the deal here? Can I recreate it? And of course not, because it just takes too long. And we had just gone through all, but it ended up working out so well for us because I estimated the value of that Gaylord. I'm like, if I get 75 cents a book, that's probably pretty good for the bundles profit at the end. And then I ended up getting almost $3 or $4 a book. And so it was just and for a large supply, it was such a white swan event. It was just a crazy thing to wake up in the morning to. Because I guess the news came out at like 3 a.m. my time or something crazy. So it was really waking up to just a massive amount of sales of the same stuff over and over again. It was crazy.
That is crazy.
Can you explain? So you're talking about obviously referring to the Black Swan events. Can you kind of go in and explain what that means to someone that's not familiar? I've heard of Black Swan. I'm not really familiar with White Swan.
So it's all really just a perspective situation. I mean, you have a Black Swan event, like let's say the pandemic as a whole, and it just absolutely comes out of nowhere. It's rather unpredictable, and it causes such impact that there's a wake of its aftermath, right? So you have a White Swan event, and a smaller one came back later with, I think it was like, what are those little cavemen? God, the little paperbacks. It was like Captain Underpants or something like that. 1 or 2 of the books, went the same way. And suddenly this little paperback went up to $40 or $50 because the threat of it being unavailable in the near future. And I mean, it's a Black Swan event to somebody, but it's a White Swan event to somebody else. You know what I mean? Like we're on the selling side, we're on the supply side of that situation. So suddenly we're able to, I don't want to use the term price gouging because that's such a dicey term, but the price of the good due to market forces goes way up way quickly, and our cost to supply that did not change. So I don't mean to shrug, but it's something that we didn't predict. I mean, it's a White Swan event. Our profit margins were absolutely massive due to no predictability of the event. I don't know how else to explain it.
I think you might be cutting out there, Caleb.
Yeah, I think so too.
I may, yeah, Michael, you cut out on my end. I'm sure it's me. I don't think they have good insight, so we'll see how well this does.
We're good. We can hear you right now. So
perfect. Well, we'll go with that. Well, let's kind of switch. Let's jump in here, Michael's story. So, Michael, you've been selling books for how long now?
I think 2016, 2015, somewhere right in that frame. But things didn't really take off for me for about another 18 months or so.
Okay.
I started, I guess I'll just dive right into my own history. If you go back far enough, I used to do storage lockers, like what you see on Storage Wars. That was what I did. I've always enjoyed the hustle of it. If you go back and look at the first 2 seasons, because it's filmed largely in Los Angeles and Orange counties, I'm in the background of a lot of the auction scenes, just hiding in the background. And I learned how to do resale and what it took to resale. And I was very stubborn to sell on Amazon because of the hurdles at that time, which I thought were a lot. Joke's on me, look at today. But I sold a lot of stuff on eBay because it's like the Wild West there. You know, you make a listing, you submit your own photos, you flip, right? And so I enjoyed that aspect of it all. And then it kind of fell off its side because the prices for those situations went sky high with the TV show. There was a lot of looky-loos. And one of the hardest things, and I'm sure you guys agree, the hardest people to compete against are the ones who don't know how to make money in our industry, because they don't make money. And how do you beat that? You know what I mean? So time passes, and then I have gone to thrift stores before, and I remember what people treated books like from the storage auction scene, which is they're a nuisance, they're in the way, they're heavy, and they're bulky. And people just, it's trash. And nobody was paying for them. You could see a storage locker absolutely filled to the brim with books. And the perspective of that scene is that $5. And we're talking about hundreds and hundreds of bankers' boxes. Nobody wanted to touch it. It's ironic because now you see that, and thanks to you guys in particular, that does not sell for $5 anymore. I'll let you know. People have come keen to what those values really are. But at the time, it was always viewed as a nuisance. So time passes, and I learned that having a niche was much more scalable than selling just anything you came across. And the learning was fun, but the work wasn't. Having to make a listing for anything from automotive equipment to men's t-shirts, it was just too much. Everything, too much to learn. Even if you want to be the biggest sponge and absorb everything, is too much. So
let's pause there real quick. So you were doing storage units. Yeah. Go through what's one of the most profitable things that you kind of stumbled across, and then what's one of the weirdest things you stumbled across?
So probably the same unit, actually. Really? One of the first ones, the most profitable unit we had was, we actually ended up, there's a lot of antique malls in Southern California, and a lady had passed away because we actually had paperwork that showed it in the locker. And she had her entire antique mall in there. And that include 14 karat rings, just precious metals up the wazoo. And we paid $350, and everything was organized in bankers boxes. So it should have screamed value. $350 at the time is probably, $800 now, but still not worth, we probably pulled out $15,000, $17,000 out of just fine jewelry, literally just sending it to smelters and appraisers and stuff like that. It was fairly easy work too. But some of the funner stuff is like vintage musical equipment is just really cool. And we came across like accordions for mariachi bands, and getting them refurbished and appraised and everything. Like, you see the passion of those little subcultures, and it's just really endearing to see how much people love things you had no idea about. And I don't know if I enjoyed profiting as much as I enjoyed the experience of selling the items. It was just a really cool experience. And then whenever we've had the chance to find like basic medical equipment, like crutches and wheelchairs and stuff like that, it was always redeeming to kind of just, we never sold them. I'll just put it that way. We would give them away to just people that needed them. And that was like a personal rewarding experience, because, you don't know what other people's stories are. So if you can help, try to help.
Yeah. That's awesome. The storage war stuff is fascinating. And you, like you said, you just have to become an expert in so many different areas, or just learn to take educated guesses. One of the things I appreciate about, I hope that kind of we can weave into a couple of the questions tonight. You seem to have a pretty understanding of risk, and how that relates to stock market, how it relates to, like, we talk about sporting events, we talk about just a number of things. And I just love hearing your perspective on understanding risk. And I think it's important to get across to watching it all. There's no guarantee. What we're trying to do is play with risk. Is there asymmetrical upside? Is there the chance that something takes off and does really, really well? And what's the worst that could happen? If you're trying to get into Amazon and want to start with whatever, we advocate for books, obviously, because that's our world. That's kind of the software we sell. But it's very low risk. There's not a lot that can go wrong. You're going to pay $1 for books and flip them and make, 4, 5, 6, 10. And of course, you can get the crazy upside of $100 flip or a couple $100 flip. So you were doing that business. Was it a risk decision that caused you to say, hey, I need to specialize and learn something and kind of gravitate to books? You could have picked any one of those other categories you just talked about. So what was kind of that inciting moment that said, hey, I got to get out of this space and kind of pour into something else?
Scalability. The other stuff, you can't. Economies of scale was a big thing that I'm firmly aware of. And when you're making eBay listings, you just can't go much faster. Everybody really kind of goes that same speed. You can make the pictures look better, but the actual time it takes to do things is pretty linear. So you're only going to grow at the same profit rate that you're already doing it. And that was a discouraging. I do live in Southern California. You need a healthy income to live the lifestyles that you want here. So scalability came with what I realized is that being a jack of all trades had a limited upside, but being the king of a market could be scaled. And not to actually be the king. I mean, I was joking with a friend today. I know 5 companies in San Diego County that are bigger than me in book selling. And that's just crazy to think that they're all right in my next doors. You got the Latin pickers and guys like that. And they're killing it. They're just absolutely killing it. But scalability. And, I try to live my life with goals that aren't necessarily business in mind. And I want to provide for my family. And I know what that was going to take. And I knew that doing that industry of the jack of all trades just would not achieve my life goals. And I'm a big software nut too. I know we've bickered about a lot of things, frankly. And the scalability with software, the idea of a database mode, and the idea that we could make a full workflow exist in 20 seconds is just absolutely mind-boggling. And the scalability of doing so is massive. You don't need to make much when you can do all the touching for a transaction is 20 seconds. How much do you need to make? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So that was what got me, was the scalability and understanding that while I personally would have never guessed that book selling had the upside that it does, and I've seen and I've experienced, the marketplace is so vast, so wide, and frankly, so profitable that we can all exist in it without, we don't have insiders stealing business secrets and stuff like that. We don't have to have that because there is enough, even for the hungriest of us. It's mind-boggling, frankly.
Well, yeah, you said a lot in there that kind of stands out, but in terms of, the market is very large. People always say, when I tell them what I do, I used to say I flip books, and now I just say I'm in e-commerce because that's more granular, it's more nebulous, and people just kind of away from it. But when I used to say I sell books, they go, huh? People still read? Like that market has to be dying. Surely that's not like your day job, like your full-time thing.
Yeah. And
it's fascinating to see that. So you made the decision, and we'll kind of get to that risk element and talk through a little more of your specific business. You're well thought out, but you're also a pretty humble guy. And you did give me the green light to share a little bit, but Michael's sales are right around 7 figures. And he's saying there's five other businesses or 4 other businesses that are bigger than you that you know of.
I know of 5. And if I were to guess, I'd probably say there's 8. I'm pretty in tune with things, but I think there's a couple OA guys out here. And you just never know what their numbers are, because if they're killing it at OA, there's that niche, and it can be incredibly profitable for the smartest minds. And I don't know that I'm that smart, and I'm a pretty smart guy. So I think there's a couple. I've met them way back when I was starting. I hope he's still in business. So there's probably a couple.
Yep. So there's at least 5 businesses that are probably north of 7 figures just in the San Diego area, just in the book space, books/media. How many businesses have you seen come and go if you've been doing this for, 5-6 years at this point?
A lot. Just, when I was going to book sales, I'll be honest, I don't really go to book sales anymore. We have a much more sustainable business model than that, not to knock it, but Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, it feels great when you have a life going on behind you. The weekend warriors is what I kind of call them. They come and go, you know what I mean? Or you can tell that their business isn't what it used to be. Some people just are still lingering onto their inventory from 2 years ago and just letting it bleed. They never recovered from the pandemic, what have you. I've seen a lot of businesses come and go, and I can only imagine that that's a fraction, because I'm not very active in the smaller level scene of thrift stores and book sales and things like that. So a lot of businesses. I probably hundreds in all honesty.
The turnover rate is pretty high. All right, so you run let's call it a 7-figure business, or borderline, whether it's just above or just below. Let's just call it right there. So $1 million book business in Southern California. And one of the things I like about you is it's kind of what we talked about in terms of how to scale up and how to get books. You got some creative ways to do so, but you don't have a warehouse.
No.
You don't have any huge physical presence. You don't have a ton of employees. So tell us a little bit about your overhead and what that kind of sets up as.
So we have a 600 square foot storage locker. That's what we have. And the rate for that is disgusting. It's about $900 a month just for that storage locker. Ooh. But when we need to, we can bring in bookloads there. The only reason it's as big as it is because if I want to buy a truckload, I need a space for a truckload. We turn everything over very, very quickly. In fact, I'm always ashamed when we're behind by more than 3 days from intake to outbound. I don't have many employees. My overhead is exceedingly low, and I like to keep it that way. I wrote in the group earlier this week that I'm kind of auditing our entire workflow and software packages. And I know what software is kind of out there. And I was kind of saying, it's like, my software overhead is like $300, which for the scale of our business is exceedingly low. And so some of these other packages that are noticed, in the thousands of dollars a month, I just don't see it. I don't see how they're going to add to our value at that price. But keeping our overhead low has given us a competitive advantage in our marketplace. I like to pay attention to what my competitors are doing. I try to be really friendly with them. Actually, I'm probably far more intimate with my competitors in a friendly manner than most people would think. But knowing where they're at, knowing where I need to be, is always kind of giving me a little bit of a competitive advantage. And I just try not to use that as a mallet over their heads. I don't want to be that guy.
Well, we talked about this quite a bit. We talk about, strategy and corporate strategy in terms of like, one, how do we, deal with software competitors? How do we, try and grow the market? How do we make sure we're doing okay? And you've talked about it as well. You've said, how, and you, I don't know if it's when you've been drinking or thinking or on the golf course, but you come to me a lot of times and go, what if I was just going to squeeze everybody out? What would that look like? What would that do to the market? Am I a bad person for doing it? Can I actually do it? And so I know you think a lot of game theory in terms of that. But so I like a couple of takeaways. So you can run a big business. You don't have to have a lot of overhead. I think, and we'll get to it in just a second, I think Amazon is going to start making some more changes in general. I think they're going to start trying to squeeze more profits out of us as third-party sellers. We've grown big. We're more than half of all of Amazon's sales now, probably pushing up north of 60%. Yeah. And at some point, Amazon goes, hey, we've grown you, we've birthed you, we've shown you the way, and now it's time for daddy to make some profit. And I think Amazon's been starting to say, hey, it's time to start making some profit here. Amazon's been propped up. AWS, their web services, have been extremely profitable, have really grown and pushed Amazon forward. And they are profitable in the third-party sales section now in terms of physical sales. They weren't for the longest time. It was almost unfair for them to compete with Walmart. And I'm in Walmart's backyard here, just outside of Bentonville, Arkansas. But it really wasn't comparable because Walmart didn't have all the online pieces. They didn't have the cloud. They didn't have all of the AWS and everything else. Sorry, Miles, the stash is gone. Back with the beard. And so Amazon was able to kind of prop up their non-profitable physical sales for years until they finally started to turn a profit. And so it'll start to get a little interesting. So there's some questions here. Samuel says, how many employees does Michael have? You already said, did you say it was 2?
It was 2.
So he's got 2 employees. He doesn't have a real warehouse. He does have a storage space, which it is California, so it is expensive.
How big is your storage space?
It's about 600 square feet.
Well, you should come to Indiana.
Yeah. It's like, it's meant for RVs, and it's the biggest one in the lot. And I'm incredibly friendly with the management staff. They know exactly what I'm doing. I've got an electric stacker jack in there, and, they let me use the forklift when I need to. And, it's a sweetheart deal, but I make sure that I hold up that end of the sweetheart of the deal too.
Yep. Well, let's take a quick pause. I wish we could say we're going to mention our sponsors, but we don't have any. So we should probably.
I got to work on that.
We need to get a little ad roll in here, but we do have a giveaway. Matthew's been putting together a little bit of a text platform, And so we're not going to abuse it, but Matthew, why don't you explain that a little bit, and then we'll kind of announce some giveaways as well.
Yeah, so if you go to that link at the bottom of the screen you see right now, it should be linked in wherever you're watching, whether it's YouTube or Facebook. You should have a clickable link in the description of this video as well. But if you go there and sign up, you'll get text alerts as soon as we go live. So not days before, you won't be bombarded with text, just a single text when we go live with training like this. We're going to be doing some giveaways specific to people on this text list. And then for other things like when new event tickets go live and stuff like that, because we will be announcing some events in the near future, we'll be launching it live probably to that text list first to let people know they're ready for sale. So it's basically an alert list. If you get on that list right now, we're going to pull from that list to do the giveaway today. And you can, kind of go over what we're giving away today.
Well, we got a couple things. Michael threw out something incredibly generous. I think he's going to stand behind it because that's kind of the guy he is. Why don't I mean, I can give away something, but it's not even going to come close to this. So let's just let you explain what that's going to be.
So I am moving. I used to live in the city of Vista. I'm moving to the city of San Diego. And as I just became aware of that yesterday, we're actually already homeowners. We're just renting out the unit to the previous family for a little while. Being a resident of San Diego gives you access to Torrey Pines Golf Course. And if you don't know, if you golf, you know what Torrey Pines is. If you don't golf, it's one of the most gorgeous golf venues located in La Jolla, California, one of the nicest areas. It's the first event of the PGA Tour because it's the weather here is always amazing. And so what I told Caleb we should do is I will book a round for that person. And if you still want to do that, of course, I'll honor that. That is, I would love to just meet and connect with people. If we're golfing, that's just that much better.
Be great. Well, I know that John, the guy that runs the marketplace program, so he's on our team. I know you're trying to get him to come out there in August. And
he's already coming.
Well, allegedly. And then I think you're trying to coax me in on that. So I think we just do that. I think it's you, me, John, and whoever wins this award. I think we'll just kind of make that happen.
Let's make it happen. Yeah.
So let's do it. So we'll do that. If you're not into golf, just politely decline when we kind of announce the winner.
I'll take. If they're not into golf, we'll do a big brewery hop. It'll be real fun.
Perfect. So if you're willing to come out to California, if that's a deal breaker, if you don't want to travel for whatever reason, we'll get you a swag bag. We'll move on to person number 2. So we'll figure that out as well. So all right, let's jump back in. And again, for those that Matthew, want to throw that link back up? We'll throw this up a couple times here. Bill did say we should have Sell Back Your Book be the sponsor. We can probably work something out there as well. They've been very good to our users. I feel like we have to shout it if it's in all caps, but it's bit.ly/ScoutIQ-TXT.
It is case sensitive too, so don't do capital Scout IQ.
Yeah, so all lowercase. That's a very generous giveaway from Michael. So that'll be fun. We'll get some golf. We'll get some breweries, and you get to meet John. He doesn't show his face very often, but he's working hard behind the scenes as well. Bill says he will golf in San Diego. I think 5-sims are not allowed, but again, we'll figure it out.
There's one awful golf course that allows 5-sims, and I will never go back.
Yeah, that should not be allowed, but we digress. So, all right. So Michael has a 7-figure business. He's got 2 employees. He's got about a 600 square foot warehouse that he processes out of. So I'm sure everybody wants to know, where do you get your books?
We get our books from wholesale sources. So bulk deals through, your big charities. I don't know what's in your areas. Things not thrift books, but things like Salvation Army. We'll buy truckloads from Goodwills. We'll bring in books from all sorts of different thrift stores areas. We have a couple chains. We are Southern California, so with this population comes a very hefty donation system. Our ecosystem is incredibly healthy because we've got, probably 30 million people located, in Los Angeles County and Southern. And while there's a lot of booksellers, that's still a lot of material that's, constantly churning through the cycle. And with the ebb and flow of marketplace prices, there's always availability if you look for it. Although making friends who know where availability is helps a lot. Because I will tell you, as soon as David said that he would mention something, I literally was on Facebook. I was like, hey, what do you know about in Southern California? It just doesn't it doesn't hurt to have friends in this industry to help you out, especially ones where you may not be their direct competitor, or not that they owe you a favor, but they respect you in the mutual, assistance. It can be large in this area. I've definitely made friends with other brokers in the past and done very, very well on some of their sources. and when they fell out of the system, kept their sources. So, I'm not going to give away exact locations because my own competitors would not appreciate that, ironically.
Well, sure. We don't, not asking for specific sources.
Yeah.
So out of 600 square feet, can you actually receive a Gaylord at a time and kind of double or triple stack that and receive it? Or what's your process for dealing with a truckload if you got one?
Yeah, so we've got an electric stacker jack, and we'll borrow the storage facility's forklift, and we'll unstack them 2 at a time. A truckload of 48 or 50, depending on how that truck wants to be loaded, will come, and you'll pull them off, and it takes, unfortunately, a long time. The hardest part is just moving the pallets at the back of the truck to the front of the truck. It's annoying. But with 600 square feet and double stacking, I wrote in the YouTube thing, we're a 12 by 45. And so we go left and right 2 tall, and then front to back. And that leaves me just enough space we've got a tilter that I actually purchased from David like 4 years ago or 5 years ago, and he trucked it over here.
That guy just connects with everybody.
Yeah, no, and that's what's great. I really, really like David. I think it's a really smart move that you guys brought him on. I'm really, really happy about that. But we have a tilter, and we just process. We have a very close facility that will take our duds. And I will be honest, that is probably the magic sauce of our business. We have daily dud disposal. So when a truck comes in, that's the fullest we'll ever be. It only gets relieved. Yeah.
Especially with a really small working facility, you have to have the ability to get rid of your refuse and your trash. Yeah. So if you don't have that, you get backed up and couldn't take the next load.
Right. And we don't necessarily monetize it because that's a negative value to my company as opposed to letting it go on a daily basis. But essentially, when that truck comes and we know when it's coming, that's the fullest we'll ever be, is when that truck arrives. Every moment after that, we get less pressure. And then we can time it up to get the next truckload or what have you. And we've expanded to have a second locker here and there. When the trucking supply is healthy or the stuff we got was all media or something nasty. But the trick for us is just the turnkey nature of it. It's what allows us to keep our costs down is really what the game is. But the daily dud disposal is probably one of our magic sauce things that I know what the value of it is. I'll just put it that way. I know what an exceedingly large value that is.
Yeah. And I would say for those that are looking to get into bulk, that's kind of the biggest tip that we say up front is you have to have an outlet for your duds, because if you don't, you will lack the ability to scale up and ramp up because you won't be able to get rid of stuff out the back door. Even in a really good scenario, what's your take rate, your keep rate?
Oh, you talk like what? Okay,
it's probably a third, give or take.
Yeah, like we're monetizing about 30%. Yeah,
exactly. So that means 70% of what you bring in the front door has to go back out the back door. And if you don't have an outlet for that,
I take it back. It's probably higher. It's probably lower than that because that's just monetizing what's scannable, and there's a lot that doesn't even get scanned because So I would say that our monetization is probably closer to like 20%. Yeah.
Yeah, so that means 80% is going right back out the door, which, the cherry picking world tends to be about 5-ish% is keepers. And so 95%, but you have the luxury of leaving those on the shelves. Yeah. If you run your own operation and do bulk and bring it in the front door, you have to have that outlet. So I think that's one of the biggest tips or takeaways is if you're going to run a bulk operation, you have to have some sort of way to get rid of the duds. Otherwise, and if you can make money on it, lucky you. If you can't, that's okay. If you have to pay to get rid of it, sometimes that may be the case as well. We've seen the recycling market go negative and now back to positive again. Yeah. Things change all the time. So that's incredible. Samuel says the keep rate seems high for FBA, but so walk us through your outlets.
Yeah.
That's selling. Do you do merchant fulfilled?
No, because we're moving, I actually shut down our merchant fulfilled altogether. And I'm just.
Do you do eBay? Do you do anything else, or is it primarily FBA?
No. I burnt myself out with those experiences that I told you earlier about on eBay. And I've dabbled back in here and there, especially when you get like a bunch of Easton Press or what I call pretty books that aren't really FBA kind of material. But now, honestly, even when I get a bunch of Easton Press, I give them to my competitors and I was like, you owe me one. It's just easier. Ironically, that's the easiest path. That's the best monetization I have. But he's right that the 20% keep rate, it's not for FBA. That's monetization. So that's after we go through all our wholesale vendors. Like I know Bill's in the chat. So I know I threw up a picture on the group earlier in the week. We send Bill 2 or 3 pallets a week to sell back your book. We do some other monetization in addition to that. So that 20% is just what I call like, we're not throwing it away. I might be getting, sadly, 12 cents a book for it, but we're monetizing it somehow, some way. I would say
and you could
Yeah.
do merchant fulfilled and try and make your own, 75 cents to $1, or, if someone's offering you 12 cents, it's, from your workflow, from your perspective, with 2 employees with limited overhead, you can just toss that book, take your 12 cents and move on. So
Right.
that's it is a value add. And, Bill, I keep threatening to lock myself in a Gaylord and ship myself to his warehouse just so I can get a little peek in there, because he won't let me in. But I have a feeling that they've got cameras and other things, so that probably won't work. Michael, you're pretty clever. Maybe we can figure out another way to kind of sneak in.
I've got a horror story for Bill, actually. One of the Gaylords I sent him, I had left it on the street for a truck to pick up, and somebody threw a bunch of food trash or some sort of loose refuse into it between the time that I loaded it on the truck and the time I left it on the street. And he received it, and I felt so bad. I got to be honest with you. It was like, that's not how I like to do business. And I've already rubbed Bill the wrong way a few times in the past by specifically not labeling my pallets to him. I guess that's difficult when you run a large warehouse to not have things labeled. But most apologies, Bill. I really don't mean any of those mistakes.
Bill says he's got attack dogs with Caleb's picture posted every 5 feet. So I'm not welcome there. I know some people have been given the red carpet and allowed to access the warehouse. I don't know what he's got against me, but we'll win him over eventually.
Wear a White Sox jersey.
Hey, you got to understand your customers for sure.
That's right.
Yep. So anyway, all right. So you're primarily FBA. I know you also do some of the buyback monetization vendors. Bill's giving you some nice love there as well. So we do appreciate Bill.
Have you guys seen that PALS came off of using Abacus level technology? They they improved their workflow, and they have, like, you guys ever look at Declutter? It looks like a clone. I'm gonna be honest.
Yeah.
It looks like a clone of Declutter, which I got to be honest, they've entered the 2000s now. It's great to see that they're off of the that model that they had, because my inputs to them alone would shut them down for 30 minutes at a time. I felt bad because I know what they are. If you've ever been to PALS, you should definitely go. It's one of the coolest bookstores in the world. But their buyback process was abysmal. But they've really
their site is updated. That's impressive.
Yeah. You should really check it out. It's something that one of my competitors, because we're friends, right, is telling me about it. And I was like, okay, well, maybe I explore this again, because every time they take a lot of stuff that I can't monetize. So, every time I can increase that monetization percentage, that's all bottom line figures. So.
Well, and I love the fact that you network with your competitors. That's one thing I love about our industry, is that it is fairly friendly. It's not as cutthroat. There certainly are people that treat it that way. Obviously, we're not going to ask you who your exact vendors are. That is private. But in terms of the business model, learning to be efficient, learning to network, all that stuff matters. One of our biggest library consignment clients is somebody that we've been trying to get them for a couple of years. And we just kind of stayed close. They had a happy relationship with somebody else, and they eventually gave us a shot, and it turned into something really good. We also have another client that reached out. They used to give all their books to actually a really popular bookstore, and that bookstore stopped accepting donations during COVID. And so they kind of found us eventually and said, hey, we had a great relationship. We were happy. There was no reason to switch, but things changed. And because that changed, they heard about us through the grapevine. And because you network and you connect with your peers, that stuff that turns into good things. So I love that you're looking for ways to, again, you could figure out how to monetize media and clean the discs, or you can find someone that specializes in it. You could do the restricted inventory and take the risk that Rockville comes calling, or you could find someone else that specializes in that. We're going to have a client, not a client, but actually a good, I wouldn't say good friend. I hate when influencers say that, but he's someone, we've chatted quite a bit. He's very smart. I respect his opinion in the industry. It's someone that is really experienced in the collectible books market. And so again, I figure out.
I know who you're talking about. We talk a lot. He's awesome.
He's awesome. So we're going to have him on the channel next week. He's phenomenal.
That's exciting.
And again, there is riches in the niches, and if you're willing to go off the beaten path and touch stuff without barcodes, there's money there. I know I've thrown tons of money away, and this guy, he kind of cringes every time we talk about it. but it's just the nature of the game. I'm playing the game a certain way. I know how to make money doing what I'm doing. Now, the more I talk to other people, the more that opens up doors, and I realize what is possible, and the more like it's better. Like he can sell for me, we can both win, and we're kind of gonna. I'm excited to introduce him to this community next week as well. So those are all interesting things as well.
He's very smart.
He is a walking encyclopedia. We all
Yeah.
cheat. We use software. We use smartphones.
Yeah.
And understand what the books are worth. This guy just knows his stuff. He's really incredible. He might just be a computer disguised as a human for all we know. So that'll be fun. Yeah, interesting.
You were talking about risk, and it's something that I was getting into a conversation with one of my competitors right before I went home today. And I think there's not a great like we have such healthy margins in our industry that I believe that the education of business associated with it can be kind of thin at times because our margins are so healthy. So like we got into it and he's like, what's your floor profit? Right. That's like kind of a common question that happens in the group. And I'll be very, yeah. How low can you go? And mine used to be lower, but I've actually kept raising mine. And I'm at $1.35. So in translation and scout IQ terms, I'm like 180 E-score, 135, right? When I'm backed up,
I rate you'll target, right?
Yeah. That's for FBA bound material.
Yep.
And when I'm really backed up, or I know that I'm going to move or something like that, I'll raise it so that my key percentage actually goes down. And there's an irony to that, but the risk that I have at 135 is near break even. Like I don't expect to make 135. I expect to pay for my costs at 135, and anything over that is a break. So he had this question for me. It was pretty good. And it's like, would you sell a book at 50-cent profit? And I said, yeah, I would sell the book at 50-cent profit. And if I lost money on the book, I would learn from that experience. So you're talking about risk. And a lot of people have, like, they don't want to make mistakes, right? And the stance that I have, and this is more like you're talking about how I think about things differently. My personal belief is if you're not making mistakes, you're not learning enough.
Yeah.
And you need to be making some mistakes in order to know where that line exists. And because we got into this bigger conversation, and it was about how none of us really produce material here. We're all resellers. None of us are publishers. None of us, and you use this term, especially back at your, when I met you at the Turn the Page conference back in Vegas, we don't value add to our industry. I know it's a horrible statement to make, but we don't. And while your guys' niche is different, you know, on the software side, everything's value add, right? But in the book selling niche, it's not. So if you're not exploring where that line of negative profits is, you can't really learn exactly where it is, and you can't adjust accordingly. So I try to chime in with positive affirmations, but when I see people say that they should only be selling books at $10 profit or something like that, I have a little bit of an eye roll, because I think you're just not, it's not that they're wrong, because obviously making more money helps, but you're not exploring exactly the depth of our industry to learn what I think are the necessary lessons in order to scale up. And that's kind of like going along with the risk nature of it. Can you afford a negative sale? And as long as you learn from it, you got your value out of it. When I met David the first time, and David is one of the most impressive people I've ever met. He was also at the Vegas convention, and somebody brought up, what's the profit you'll sell a book for? And he said something like -5 cents, right? And to somebody like, to probably most of the crowd, that was like a cringe moment. Like, why would you do that? I understood it really quick, because if you're not selling a book at -5 cents, you're also not selling a book at 10 cents, and you're not selling a book at 25 cents, and you're not selling a book at 50 cents, and you're not selling a book at $1, and you're never exploring exactly where that limit tends to exist. So I take a lot of risks. In my personal life, I've taken a lot of risks, and generally I'm right more than I'm wrong. I know I've made the joke to you, Caleb, that if you had a 51% chance of flipping a coin, how much money would you put on it?
Yeah.
And if the answer is not all of it, you have the wrong answer.
Yeah.
And it's a dicey situation for our industry, but the margins are so healthy. I kind of wish that people understood the business acumen a little bit more. That's all.
Well, the biggest thing is to treat it as a portfolio. And again, it doesn't matter that we're 7-figure sellers, right? That's
Right.
cool. It's something fun to brag about, but it doesn't matter what you sell. It matters what you take home at the end of the day. And so profits are what matters. And some people, I've talked to people, this is probably the biggest question that we field is what is the floor profit we should have? And again, it's like cutting a deck of cards. You got a deck of cards. This is the profit. If you just want to sell books that sell for $10 and up, you're going to take just a very, very small chunk of the deck. And those books are out there. You can build a business on it. There's very little that can go wrong. You're going to be fine, but you're going to go out every day and you're only going to have a 1% accept rate. So you're going to have to work your butt off and put yourself in situations to get lucky. The harder I work, the luckier I get. Or you could say, hey, I'm going to cut this deck down a little bit lower and I'm going to be fine with making, $1 profit or 50-cent profit. And the further down you cut that, if you're willing to lose 5 cents, David had a very specific reason why he said it. If you're willing to lose a little bit of money, you can have like a 70% accept rate. Well, that's not really the goal. The goal is to make money. But understanding what you're after and understanding that it's a portfolio is really important. So, and I've analyzed big sellers' inventory. We've looked at some sellers. I remember one, I'm going to butcher the numbers, but we looked at their numbers and about 60% of their books, they were willing to flip books and send them into FBA if they could make 25 cents profit. That was kind of their floor margin. Well, what happens is you send them in, you automatically pull in the costs of shipping those books. You incur the labor costs to list those books. And then some books will go up in value. Some books will sell where you list them. Some books will go down in value and some books will not sell. So understanding all that range, this seller was sending in stuff with e-scores of like 10 that would make 25-cent profit, saying, well, we'll just make it up in volume. And that's one of the biggest jokes out there in business is, well, it's fine, we're losing money, but we'll make it up in volume. And that just doesn't really happen. Now, if you're learning along the way and making educated mistakes and actually analyzing your business and measuring and managing that, great. If you're just sending it in and hoping, you might as well just go buy a lottery ticket.
Right.
And so we looked at like forget this exact seller. I mean, I know who it is. I can't say on air here, but we looked at their business and like 60% of their units were generating like 3% of their profits. So I said, time out, hold the phone. You guys can literally work half as much. You can cut out 60% of your effort and you won't even feel it. You'll still make 97% of the profit that you were making before without sending in all this junk. Right. And further, you could send it to a wholesale company or make a little bit of money recycling. And before you know it, you're probably making more money than you were before.
Yeah.
So it is important to slice the deck at a part that makes sense. But if you're not pushing the envelope, to your point, and not understanding what actually is probably too far and then kind of dialing it back, then maybe you're missing out. And I think those are all pretty important.
I like it in relation to long tail books in particular, because I know that I'm just going with the Scout IQ basic triggers. It's like $50 for an e-score of 1 or something like that. And how many times do you have to be right to pay for it? That's the kind of translation that I like to use, like the gambling terminology. Like, how many times do I need to hit 17 on a roulette wheel for it to be a profitable endeavor? And obviously gambling is going to lose money in the long run, but the analogy kind of works where it's like, if I'm getting $50 on the sale price, I'm pocketing what, 30, 35. And how many times do I have to be right? If I source that book for 10 cents, 15 cents, even $1, how often do I need to be right? And the thing is, it's not an abstract.
If your price is under 10 cents in that example, you could be right 1 out of 500 times to break even.
And that's the thing, is it's not an abstract concept. There's a real number that exists there. And when we talk about this, it's largely viewed as this abstract, but it's like, no, you need to be right 7 to 10% of the time, or even lower. It's a very low percentage to be profitable. And then for a business, I have overhead and cost of labor, factor that in, and suddenly that cost of listing a $1 book, it's not $1 anymore. But if I'm listing a bunch of e-score 1 books, which a lot of people won't touch, right? And if they vet out as being real, $50 books as opposed to, one-offs or something, how often do I need to be right? I guess, and then go to e-score 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12. How often do you need to be right in order to be hitting the profit target that you want?
And again, it's a portfolio, because you're going to be wrong on some books, right?
Yeah.
We're foolish to say that we're going to list 100 books with an e-score of 1 and sell every single one. So by its very nature, we're going to be wrong. We might list a book And, there's a good chance that it won't sell. But if it does, it's asymmetrical upside. If the upside outweighs all of the effort to list the rest of that portfolio, then it's fine. And that's probably the biggest thing that we can kind of factor in.
That's like such a big tangent. I don't even remember the original question.
No, but it's good. I mean, I kind of set us up for this by saying we're going to talk about risk. But
yeah, and I know why you asked me that question, because it's not just the book selling side; it's the way I think about things in risk portfolios and profiles.
Sure, and again, I think, and I talk about this a lot. I refer to it less about risk, and I just call it tinkering. I think it's important to tinker, try some things. You're going to be wrong, and that's okay. And again, it's that pendulum we talked about. Do you want to be perfect, or do you just want to take action? And those that want to just take action, I like to say that it's tinkering, but it's educated tinkering. It's saying, hey, I have this thesis, I have this idea, I think I can make money doing it. What's the worst that happens? Well, I lose the money that I put into it. No big deal. That's fine. I'm not going to, it's position sizing for stock trading. I'm not going to put 50% of my net worth into a guess, but it's just an educated guess. It's a tinker. We're going to see. Or you could say, I want to be perfect. I only want to list $10 books. And even if the price drops, I still want to win every single time. And I'm only going to list books with an E-score of 60 and higher so that I can sell every single book. Well, that's the wrong way to run the business, because you're missing a huge chunk of business that at a portfolio level will make you money. Will you lose individual books? Absolutely. Will you make mistakes and kind of, fall on your face a few times? Yeah, we talked about that with Elisa on one of our first calls. She's brand new in the space. She's like 2 months in it, and she talks about falling on her face and wanting to fall on her face, because when she does that,
how refreshing is it to see new people? Like, that is so cool. Like, they have such an uphill battle to just get into the market right now. It is so refreshing to see new faces.
Well, we saw this at Romer's Miami conference, because there was people that were doing, $4 million in sales every month. Yeah. And there were brand new sellers that had just hit their first $10,000 total. And those are night and day differences. And yet the room stood up and clapped for someone that reached their first $10,000 in sales, because we all remember what that was like. Yeah. I've got a 4-year-old kid. He's incredibly curious about life. Somewhere along the way, we forget that it's okay to be curious. Yeah. Right. We all have that baked within us, but now it's like, I have to know everything.
It's so cool to see people killing it, or you're just people that you like, in the gambling terminology, I put chips on, you know what I mean? Like, it's so cool to see people, like, the landscape is so much harder than it used to be. It's so refreshing to see people just on their way.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Well, let's take some questions. We've been going for about an hour. We like to keep these to, just over an hour. So we want to be respectful of your time. Thanks for those that are watching. Again, we joined the giveaway here. We're going to be doing a brewery tour / golf at Torrey Pines, which is kind of an unprecedented giveaway. bit.ly/ScoutIQ-TXT, all lowercase. So check that out. If anybody has questions, pop those in right now, whether you're watching on YouTube or Facebook. We will try and field just a handful of those, and then we will monitor later. So if you do watch this as a recorded level, sorry, you're going to miss out on the giveaway. Please join that text stream as well. We will let you know when we go live. I've got a bunch of old swag and some Scout IQ type gifts to give away. We'll be kind of mentioning those over text as well. And we are bringing back book conferences as well, whether they're Turn the Page or other remains to be seen, but we'll be bringing those back. We'll be getting people back together in person, and you'll be the first to know if you're on our text stream. So
where are we going?
Well, you're a big Vegas fan, I understand, but we can't go there in the middle of the summer. That's pretty poor. I think Denver's going to be high on the list, and I think Vegas is going to be high on the list.
I showed you what the results of the poll were. You got to listen.
I understand.
Hey, Vegas was first. Denver was second, right?
It was. But Vegas in July is a really bad idea, so that might happen later fall.
There's a screwball pool lounge in Vegas.
That might have to happen.
Wait, there's a what lounge?
A screwball.
Oh, a screwball
lounge. Just saying.
Nice. Maybe for episode 5, we'll plan ahead a little more and do some live Q&A where we bring some people on to ask questions. That would be fun to do in future episodes.
Yeah.
But we'll be looking in the chat. So if you guys have had questions throughout this, drop them in the chat. I know there's some sitting here waiting we can kind of tackle. But if you have questions before we sign off here, please drop them in the chat right now. Whether Facebook or YouTube, we'll see it. Then we can start grabbing some of these. If you guys see any that are interesting that you want to answer, I'll click on them and bring them on the page.
We'll take a couple of those,
'cause
and then we'll do the giveaway. So,
Brandon just wrote a question on the YouTube channel, and he's one of my local competitors that I get along with very, very well. He's pretty new to this space. If you can find it, his question was, "What's your most recent challenge you've faced, and how did you overcome it?" And I can have a sarcastic answer, which was, I had a partial pallet that I needed to move today of FBA bound material, and do not have a lopsided pallet, or your boxes will fall off the side of it. And I did that personally. I had to pick up damaged boxes. That wasn't fun. For Brandon, and he's probably more in tune with this, how to deal with your local competitors on a personal level. And one of the more fascinating things that I learned from Caleb is this concept of work-life balance, of not just being a successful business person, but also being the person that you want to see in the mirror as you do so in a competitive marketplace like our own. And it's almost like speaking to Brandon at this point, but I do mean this wholeheartedly. You do want to be successful in business and life, and they are different things. So I know Caleb used to say this, but what is enough money? And we here in San Diego, that's a complex question, because it's higher than most of the rest of the country. But what is enough for you to have the life that you want? Because at a certain point, I could be more competitive. I could squeeze out more. I think we have a very efficient workflow. But in Brandon's case, I know he's got little girls. Like, I don't want to be that guy. You know what I mean? So like, getting along with everybody makes me the person that I want to be when I come home at night. So you're just balancing the work-life balance is probably a constant difficulty of mine, because I think I have the tools to be bigger, and we don't. And I pay my employees well. They're happy. It's not like that. It's a personal thing.
I think balance is overrated. I think it's important to understand, but I think there's periods of life when the pendulum is very work focused, and I think there's times when it's very self or family or whatever else your priorities are. And I think the idea that we live in stasis right in the middle is a misnomer. We can only do one thing at a time. So I think it's this natural, like a wave. It's going back and forth. And maybe that's a little foo-foo, I don't know, but I think that's important. There's times, there's a season when you just push and hustle and work hard. There's times when you pull back and you focus on other things, and the more that you can oscillate between those in a healthy manner, I think that's what balance is. But I think balance is really just a change of focus over and over and over again.
Yeah.
So well, cool. Brandon has some kind words there. What other comments do we have? Otherwise, we'll jump to the
this one right here from Facebook user. How do you decide what to dump from your inventory?
I am so data dependent. I am what used to be called a scan junkie. In order to be scalable, and this is more like a business lesson, in order to be scalable, you need to be repeatable. And that's not just a repeatable for yourself, it's a repeatable for your staff. Okay. So you need to, if you want to scale up at gross scale, you need to set up a standard for yourself, whether it be your triggers or some sort of standard, and just keep doing that over and over as fast as you can. And if there's a mistake in your standard, you fix your standards, but you keep repeating the standard. I watch a lot of people make case-by-case analysis. Case-by-case analysis is not scalable. It's a harsh truth, but it's not, especially if you want to outsource your labor or efforts or whatnot. You need to set a standard of profit in our situation per book. It should be negatively inverse to E-score. So the higher the E-score, the lower the profit. The lower the E-score, the higher the profit. And Caleb's has his default triggers. They work for a lot of people. Mine have changed because we're a developed company, and I would share mine. I actually have no problem with that. But you need to set a standard that's repeatable and scalable, because the best thing you can do is do it quick. Like when I was talking about risk earlier, we don't have a lot of value add. The thing we can control is our business workflow, and being quick is the key in a lot of situations.
That's good. Avery's got a good quote here about balance. If you guys want to.
I like beer. Like I'm good with any amount of beer over any period of time. I will say
Paraphrasing.
I will say this.
Perfect,
We
like
send
that, yeah.
we send our media to Avery, and I will be very blunt and honest. I underestimated that man. He has created a very successful operation for himself in a way I would not have guessed, and I've been very humbled and respect what he's created. It's very impressive, and we use him. I'll be honest. We actively use restricted inventory ourselves.
Yeah, he's Avery likes to just present that he's a free floater and dances and just enjoys life. But when it gets to it, he drinks a cup of coffee and gets work done. So
A very impressive
fun to
individual.
see him. I agree. I would say hats off, but you don't want to see the hat hair, so we won't do that. All right, 1 or 2 more questions. Otherwise, we will do the giveaway. This is
Got one right here. I haven't read this one yet, but here's a good one. I've been cherry picking books for about a month. Haven't sent in a shipment. I'm trying to list them, but need a good start to finish tutorial. Don't want my first shipment to go bad. Advice: if you are using Scout IQ and log into your Scout IQ online portal, you can click on it's either training or university at the top of the screen, and you'll have a walkthrough start to finish of starting your Amazon account to sending off your first shipment for beginners if that's something you're trying to do right now. So I recommend that, but if you guys have other suggestions, you can throw those in there too.
Again, I would bias toward action. The worst that can happen is you screw up. Amazon's not going to kill your account over one mistake. But do your homework, do a little bit of research. We do have all the training kind of step by step to make sure it works. But you're going to make mistakes. As Alisa said, you're going to fall on your face, and that's okay. And you're going to lose a little bit of money here and there, but that's kind of the cost of education that will allow you to then scale up and make better decisions.
Mm. Someone says we should have the other Dave on here, FBA Dave.
Who else would you guys like to see? I know John Muscarello is.
That's a good one to post down there.
I vote for Vishal. I texted you this personally. I think what Vishal is doing up in Canada is amazing.
He is pretty fantastic. We chat a little bit. He's an impressive individual.
Yeah.
So he'd be a good one as well. Well, Matthew, let's if you guys have a question or two, we will take 1 or 2 more. But why don't we do the giveaway? This is going to be for a Southern California, San Diego visit, brewery tour, and a little bit of golf. So we will schedule this out probably in August, but we'll schedule something out. I don't know how you're gonna work the wheel of magic and
so let me grab the number. So this is for people that are maybe tuning in later. This is coming from this list down here. So if you go to that link at the bottom of the page, people that have signed up there, this is where it's coming from. I'm just gonna grab the total number of people on the list, do our random number generator, and the tricky part is that mostly we have. Let me see here. Let me see if I can do a name because I don't want to give someone's email address over.
Yeah, we don't want to do that. We can mention.
Okay, I've got a name. I've got names for everyone on this list. I put that in the sign up, thankfully. So we've got a name we can mention, and we won't mention your email over the live stream. Let me do a random number generator real quick, and we'll see who won.
Well, and About Stuff says it's the best show so far, so thank you. And Michael, we do appreciate you coming on. It was a little bit short notice. I know you wanted to get on the show, but we do appreciate having you. Having just an hour is not really enough to really dig into everything, but we appreciate your willingness to jump in and share. And you are pretty accessible.
Even get into the stock market.
No, we didn't. Well, stonk market as well, but Mike is pretty available, and he does put a lot of content on the Facebook group as well. You'll see him. He does say a few things tongue in cheek. Sarcasm is a love language of mine.
Yeah, I gotta watch out for that.
If you don't understand that, it's okay. Don't take him too seriously there. But he's pretty interesting as well. Mike says if we win,
I have a good standard. If the reply is more than 1 paragraph, it's serious, and if it's less than 1 paragraph, it's probably not.
That's probably a good point. Mike Markuson says if he wins, can you have a swag bag instead? Absolutely. We will pass the golf trip and the beer tasting to somebody else. So Matthew, have you worked out?
Yeah, so we got the number here, and I'm looking for the number right now. Give me 1 quick second. I'll pull it up here. All right, the winner is Tiffany Richardson.
All right, Tiffany. Hopefully you're into golf or beer or both.
And we'll send you an email at whatever email you signed up with too. And we have your number. We can give you a call.
We get your number.
You won as well.
Cool. So Tiffany, congratulations. If you're into golf or not, we will be seeing you in August. Otherwise, we will get you some other swag or something accordingly and work with a different person as well. So thank you for that. Michael, any last comments? Any last tidbits you like to leave everybody with?
It's a hustle. Like the harder you work, the more you make. And I know I wrote in the YouTube channel, at least, if you guys have personal questions, feel free to reach out. I'm a really data analytic individual. I lean into numbers real hard, almost as hard as Caleb does. And Matthew, the content that they produce is absolutely amazing. You do not need much more than the booklet per university. It all holds up pretty darn well today. And if you need help, ask. It's a very friendly environment. You've got two of the greatest guys right here. There's a lot of sources of good information. There's a lot of sources of bad information too. But
there's a lot of misinformation out there.
But it's easy to tell the difference.
Yep.
Everybody I've met, for as competitors as we are, we all exist in the same marketplace. Some of my good friends have come out of this same situation. And I'm not saying that from a book selling perspective, just like good friends like Caleb. I look forward to meeting Matthew now that he's a little closer and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So ask. The way you learn is by asking questions. Learning from other people's mistakes takes a lot less time.
It does. And reach out. Again, we've all been there where we're hesitant to say what we do. We want to hide our scanner and not talk to staff. The more that you reach out, the more that you talk to people, the luckier you're going to get, the more you're going to learn. So put yourself out there. It is a really good community, even though we are competitors. It is really fascinating. So do that, do the work. Michael, I appreciate you as a friend. Thanks for coming on here as well, sharing a little bit, and hopefully this opens some conversations as well.
Yeah, I hope so.
Thank you so much.
Cool. Well, with that, we're going to sign off on episode number 4. Tune in next week. We're going to be interviewing Max from Florida. We'll be giving more information next week. We're excited to get that and share a little bit about how to monetize some old books and stuff that you're probably missing out on. So if you got any last bourbon, we'll say a final cheers and a good night. And thank you for watching. Thanks, everybody.